Hi everyone, this is the Do3 podcast. This is for anyone who loves swimming, cycling or running, or of course, likes to do all three. My name is Dave Knight and I'm a professional triathlon coach based in the UK. Along with my excellent co-coaches, who you'll get to know along the way, we spend our daily lives helping those who love to swim, bike and run. We want this podcast to inspire you, motivate you, make you laugh and cry, have fun and learn a thing or two. We want to help you get the most out of the sports that you love. I'm glad you found us and we hope you stick around. Welcome to the Do3 podcast. I'm speaking to Forrest Smith. Well, you can introduce yourself in a second, Forrest, can't you? Forrest Smith, founder and CEO of Kineon. So really pleased that you're here, Forrest. Forrest, why don't you start off by telling me a little bit about yourself and what's Kineon?
Absolutely. I have spent about 20 years in the past building startups. And then kind of growing them to a certain size, then having them acquired. And Kineon is the latest in a series of entrepreneurial startups that I've worked on. It's the first one, however, that we've been really focused more on the kind of impact rather than the commercial growth and earnings of things. And I think that was something that was very important for both my partner Tom and I in starting the company, and is actually over time developed into what our mission statement is, which is to improve the quality of life for the largest number of people we can in the most meaningful way we can. And we'll probably go into a little bit later, how we came to that. But the main thing is that it's measurable and it impacts what we'd like to be able to impact, which is, again, people's lives, both our core stakeholders, but primarily our users. And that's how we came to found Kineon from a mission standpoint. And our first product, hopefully, that we'll talk about a little bit today is the Move Plus, which is a laser and LED therapy device for neuromuscular pain and inflammation. So that's a little bit of background on me and the company.
Great, thank you. Yeah, thank you very much. I mean, obviously, I've come to know you through Bex, who's a friend of mine locally actually happens to live in the same village as me, and she told me about the red light device. If I can just call it that for now, because that's what quite a few of our kind of our community will call it, because they will probably know as little as I do about red light therapy. That's probably not the right thing to call it, even, is it? In fact, I've been kind of did my homework before you came on, Forrest, and I've been googling trying to find out a little bit more about it. Basically, and one of the reasons is because Bex kept on she sent me a message about a little bit of information about the product, and she kept on referring to PBM, with no explanation about what that was. So I had to Google it, and it's photobiomodulation, apparently, which was formerly known as low-level light laser therapy. Is that
That's right.
Am I right? Okay, all right. So that's what we're talking about today, and I'm really intrigued because once I started Googling it and went on YouTube, I suddenly discovered a whole world of things I know nothing about in terms of red light therapy. All right, so I was interested in it, and I'm hoping that the people listening or watching will be able to will be interested in it, find out a little bit, and learn a little bit more about it as well. So why don't you tell me? You got to treat me really as kind of somebody. Well, I literally don't know anything about it, so please just go. Tell me what's it all about?
I think you've brought up one of the good topics to start with, which is, what is it called? Because you hear about red light therapy or light therapy or photobiomodulation or low-level laser therapy. And I think, just to give a little bit of background to what's happened from the nomenclature, a lot of the early devices in this space, from a testing standpoint, came from medical device manufacturers and came from the laser side of the house, where LEDs have become more robust and a better option from a light emitter standpoint in the last 10 years. Before that, most everything was coming, the professional manufacturers for this type of product were coming from the laser side. And because of that, everything was referred to as low-level laser therapy, or LLT, or high impact, or something. HILT is the other one. High impedance or high impact laser therapy. And with the kind of advent of LEDs coming in and being used for the same type of treatments, and we'll talk a little bit about what the differences are between LEDs and lasers, and what you can kind of expect from them from a treatment standpoint a little later. But with LEDs coming in as a good light source, they're very robust. They're easier to design from an engineering standpoint. There's less regulatory around the around using LEDs in lighting systems from from the FDA and different regulatory bodies around this. But what happened with the academic community was that everybody who had been writing and researching around and writing papers around this from a low-level laser therapy started to question what they could use for a term for an LED system. And so we had, at that time, it started to kind of fork in a few different, or branch into a few different names from a nomenclature standpoint. So there was low-level light therapy, low-level laser therapy, there was LED therapy, there was red light therapy, and around, I want to say around 10 or 11 years ago, the academic community who was trying to research the space and finding it more and more difficult, because there was, instead of researching one term and finding the answers you're looking for, you're having to research 10 or 12 different terms, came together and decided that photobiomodulation, so photo, light, and then bio and modulation, changing of the physical nature, became the kind of standard blanket term for all of these different types of light therapy. And so that's what we see right now from the medical literature is, if you're searching through thousands of papers that are out there, the majority of them in the last 10 years all shifted into photobiomodulation, with a few there's always some drama in the academic community of who accepts it and who doesn't accept it and who thinks this is the wrong way to go. So you still find some marginal cases outside, but for the majority of it, I would say 95% plus of these different studies would now at least include photobiomodulation, so that from a research standpoint, if you're digging into the literature, it's a little bit easier to find.
Okay, so that's what we're talking about: PBM, photobiomodulation. And you say it's LEDs and lasers combined, is that right, in the device?
So in our device, in the Move Plus, the Kineon device, it is actually LEDs and lasers, and we've selected that for a couple of different reasons. And I did promise to dig into a little bit with the lasers and LEDs and what the difference is. Yeah. And I think this is a good time to do that. The lasers actually generate much more direct and what they call collimated light, collimated and coherent light, which means that essentially it's going to be in a much smaller emission pattern. It's going to be much more direct, and it's much easier to dose internal tissue from a dosing standpoint with the right amount because of the penetrative qualities of the laser. Where LED, it's actually interesting. The LED chips, before they're packaged into the end LED parts, actually emit light in 360 degrees. And when they're actually packaged into the LED parts, those LED parts typically have a cup that they're then bonded down into, and these cups constrain that from 360 degrees to 120 degrees. The problem with that is that the light's not coherent, and 120 degrees makes it very difficult to penetrate internally. And there's some things you can do to offset that. But what we've done is combine two different things. One is red wavelength light, deep red light, which doesn't penetrate as far, but does impact more at the surface level of the skin. And that light we generate from LEDs. And the idea of this light is to be able to increase the blood flow in the area, in the region, essentially at the surface level. And this works in conjunction with the lasers, where we use infrared wavelengths, 808 nanometer infrared lasers, to be able to penetrate further internally. And there are some good standards from this that we found from as a starting point, because dosage for delivering light is very much like dosage for pharmaceuticals. This is something that if you're not delivering the optimal dosage, you're not going to get the optimal outcome. And the same kind of thing if you're taking any kind of pharmaceuticals, you'd like to be within the suggested range. This is the same for delivering photons, because photons, the light photons, are interacting with molecules in your body, similar to how a pharmaceutical drug would interact with different molecules in your body. And the key to that is to be able to deliver the right amount of photons to the right tissue, because you have different types of tissue at different depths. Yep. So we're balancing the shallow LED red with the deeper infrared laser light for optimal outcomes for neuromuscular pain and inflammation.
Okay, perfect. So it's a light device. I've got one here, and I'll open it up on the camera in a second so people can see. So it's a light device. It uses a couple of different methods of delivering light to different depths of the body, depending on where you put it. So again, in simple terms, what's it actually doing once the light gets in there? What's it actually doing to the tissues that it's hitting?
There's a few different things. One of the main ones, which is it's kind of more at a macro level, so it's easy to talk about, versus kind of the cellular level ones are, we're going to go down a rabbit hole of biochemistry.
Yeah.
Biochemistry.
Yeah. Okay.
But for the macro level, we're impacting hemoglobin. Hemoglobin is the carrier molecule in your blood, and typically it's known for carrying oxygen. It also carries other molecules through your blood and helps deliver those into different parts of your system. And one of these other molecules is nitric oxide. Nitric oxide is a dilation factor for your blood vessels. And so when we reduce the affinity of nitric oxide, for the hemoglobin, it actually just breaks these away from the hemoglobin and pushes more of this into your blood and opens those blood vessels in both in the local area, but also in the region. And what that does is allow better delivery of nutrients and oxygen and other things that may be blocked in the microvasculature side of any kind of injury or chronic injury or chronic pain or inflammation area in your body.
Okay, so again, so can it? What's it kind of primarily? Let's talk about your product. What's it primarily used for? What kind of? Obviously, there's a whole wealth of ailments and injuries and all sorts of things that people can be treated for. But what's the kind of main thing as an athlete that people would be using this kind of therapy for?
So there's a number of things. One kind of big blanket that we can go under is inflammation. Inflammation is really a scourge in your body, and if you are training regularly, particularly if you're training regularly at my age of life, I'm up in my 40s now, and it's harder to recover and keep that inflammation down. So I have, as an example, an old meniscus tear from wrestling competitively when I was younger, and that will flare up occasionally right now when I'm playing. So I still play rugby and train CrossFit. And so both of those are relatively high impact sports. If I get hit on the knee, or if I'm doing, deep squats or a lot of box jumps or something that puts strain or stress on this old injury, it'll flare up. And because the old injury exists, it goes into an almost chronically inflamed state much easier than the healthier tissue from my body. So for getting back into training and reducing that inflammation so that I can go back into training faster, it's amazing. In under 2 weeks, you're looking at something where in the synovial tissue, in the synovial fluid, we can reduce inflammation by chronic inflammation markers and pro-inflammatory inflammation markers by 60 to 80% over 2 weeks. It's a huge difference in how fast you can get back to your training and how you heal, so that you don't have longer term chronic degradation of the joint that's triggered by these types of inflammation.
Wow. So we're saying that regular use of a device like this can reduce the inflammation by 60 to 80% in that kind of time period. Is that what we're saying?
That's right.
That's
That's right.
Yeah.
It's
It's
amazing.
the people that we deal with, triathletes, swimmers, cyclists, runners, and people of that kind of nature, especially, well, I've just turned 50, Forrest, so I'm ahead of you on the age score of things. So I know what I'm starting to know, or I've known for a while, but what kind of aches and pains are feeling like on a more regular basis. And athletes do, don't they? You're constantly picking up aches and pains and niggles, and obviously injuries themselves as well. So if we're saying has that kind of positive impact, then obviously it's something that people really should be aware of. And I've been in the industry in triathlon coaching and around health and fitness all of my life, or certainly predominantly the last 20 years or so. And I don't know whether it's just passed me by or whether it's a fairly new thing. I mean, how long has red light? How long has the BPM therapy been around? I mean, when did it first kind of come into existence?
So light has been used to modulate different parts of the body for over 100 years now. They've got some really good research going back to the early 1900s. I think one of the things that's changed over the past 20 years and really has accelerated over the past 5 years is the type of light that we can emit and how much we can control that. And the emitters from a solid state standpoint have become much more effective and much more widespread. And as an example, also, they've become much more cost effective. When we started our project, with the mission again to move the needle for people from a quality of life standpoint, one of the things that we're committed for doing is doing that on a broad kind of basis. So we didn't want to have this limited to something that was stuck in a clinic. We wanted to be able to reduce the friction points so that people could use it in their home and that they can use it easily and kind of habit stack it with other positive habits they have in their daily routines. And when we started this project, the lasers that existed, and this was less than 3 years ago, were roughly 12 to 13 times the cost of what we found with the lasers that we're using now, which are, without going down a huge rabbit hole, they're called vertical cavity surface emission lasers. And they've been developed over the past 5 years, essentially for two different use cases. One is for LiDAR, for kind of autonomous cars or developing autonomous cars, and two is for cell phones. And we took on board with our mission to be able to use this not in a clinical area and be able to do it from a scaled volume standpoint, so that people could save, with the cost savings we have from the parts, be able to pass it on to people so they can adopt it in their home. We had to drag on to larger volume industries or larger volume product segments like these two, where the mass adoption of these smaller and more cost-effective parts has been super useful for us to be able to meet what our targets were from a cost standpoint, to be able to allow it to be adopted by people for home use.
Right. Okay. So it's, yeah, I mean, kind of coming back to what I was talking about before, I've been around and haven't been aware of them, but if they've got the potential to have that kind of positive impact on people who are suffering from a whole range of illnesses and not illnesses, sorry, of injuries and inflammation and that kind of thing, then yeah, people should really know more about it. It should be more common. And do you think it's going to be something which is much more commonplace going forward?
I do. I think we're going to find something where this is what we'd like to see is this be a gold standard or best practice product, where we work with medical practitioners about this as well. One of the things we found early in this process from a development standpoint was that if you talk to someone who was a doctor, for example, who went to medical school 20 years ago, um, the gold standards they know and what we can do from a technology standpoint right now are really different. And so there's an education and kind of a social inertia piece to this as well, where we're working with people and giving them something where in a lot of cases people are wondering, is this crystals? Is this kind of like essential oils? Like
Yeah.
where
Yeah.
how has this not been adopted more widely? And I think part of that is the technology and the medical science has been booming over the past five to 10 years. Every year we're seeing kind of a 100% increase in the number of medical papers and medical trials that go into photobiomodulation and support this and help us optimize what the treatment protocols are. But the other side is, even with that, 5 years ago, there was still technology out there or medical trials out there to support this, but those being dragged out to a larger and broader audience from a medical practitioner standpoint is just not something that most medical practitioners receive ongoing training or education about. And so it's just going to take time for this to be adopted as a wider use case. Which again, that's our goal. We'd love to see people moving away from pharmaceuticals, which are extremely damaging and increase your risks from a physiological standpoint for a number of different, cardiovascular disease increases by something like 30 to 40% across the board if you're taking NSAIDs, which is the gold standard treatment right now for pain and inflammation in your joints. It actually degrades the joint tissue faster. There's a number of negative impacts, stomach endothelial tissue, liver damage, that are placed at risk by the gold standard treatments right now. And we've got something where you can actually treat, from a technology standpoint, treat the underlying causes versus just kind of blocking the pain. It seems like something that we should be able to push a little bit faster than we've seen to date. But again, social inertia is a powerful thing, and it just takes time, I think, in a lot of cases.
Yeah, and that's why I asked the question, really, because you say it's not crystals, and in order for me as a coach, and in order for people that are kind of watching this or listening to this, it's really important that people understand that, well, first of all, it's proven. There's science behind it to back it up, and it has got proven results, and there are people who can attest to the benefits that you can get from a device like this, and it clearly is out there. So if people want to go and find out a little bit more and what I don't want to do, Forrest, is we could go down multiple rabbit holes in terms of going through all the research papers, and I don't think that would be particularly interesting for people to listen to. But I guess just a quick Google would be able to kind of point people in the direction if they do want to get to that kind of detail. The information's out there,
and we've actually we can actually send you over some of the papers that we've done for our medical practitioner partners, because again, a lot of times we're filling the role of education for these guys, because while they understand the biomechanical kind of foundation of how your body works, this is not something that most of them have seen or have considered. And so for them to understand where it's impacting, which molecules in your body it's impacting, and then understand what signaling that changes and what the outcomes are that they can expect from that, it makes a big difference for how they can get their head around it. So we're happy to pass that through, and if you want to post it along with this, it does go a little bit into a rabbit hole, but it may be interesting for some people. But the main thing is, I think there's we were talking to somebody the other day, and they had a very good way of capturing this, which is there's tens of thousands of papers out there on this subject now. It's essentially, if you wanted to compare it to something, it's essentially the creatine of supplements. If you wanted to compare it to a supplement, there's so much kind of health and safety and efficacy data out there that it's almost easier just to find kind of review and meta-analysis papers, because the RTCs are there's thousands of them. So how many of those do you want to dig through?
Yeah, yeah. And again, that's why I wanted to speak to you, and I wanted to kind of come at this from without meaning to kind of patronize potentially people that are watching or listening to this. It needs to be fair. It needs to be explained in a way that people can understand, because otherwise they just won't. They'll you need to have something to latch onto, and it's otherwise they'll just they'll lose all belief in the product itself. It needs to be simple so they can understand, and just where you say that it's it can reduce inflammation by 60 to 80% in a a certain period of time. That's really powerful. I mean, that's the kind of thing that strikes me in the conversation that we had. People can go into the detail. All I need to know is it works, it's proven, this is the kind of response rate you get, and we'll open up the device and have a look at that in a second. But I know lots of people who are going to be really interested in giving it a go and see what it feels like. I guess it's the kind of device where you can try it for yourself and see what kind of response you get.
100%. And again, that's what we're here for. It's really, we've both my partner Tom and I have made ourselves available for our community. We found really great support from people who, if it's nothing against that, but again, this company was started with a kind of clear mission, or we've developed a clear mission and kind of dialed that in over the time that we've been together. But we make ourselves available for any one of our community who want to be in contact with us. There are some people who have found slower or less results, and we've been able to work through that with them from a protocol development standpoint. A few things that are our caveats for kind of expectation levels for it. Where you have less tissue, you have less blood flow, you're going to see slower results. And so we have people who are using this for osteoarthritis, and reducing inflammation actually helps osteoarthritis quite a lot. If you're treating osteoarthritis in your hands, you're not going to see the same speed of results that you would in treating your osteoarthritis in your knees or your hips, just because there's not as much tissue there, and it just takes longer.
Sure.
And so as a kind of rough kind of order of magnitude of time comparison for that, what we're seeing for knees is people after 2 weeks are feeling much better. You're seeing people, on a VAS, the visual assessment score, go from kind of a 6, 7, 8 down to a 2, 3, 4 over 2 to 3 weeks. Where with the hands we're looking at more like 5 to 6 weeks, and it still is helping them and it's still working. But because there's less tissue, because there's less blood flow to those joints and in that area, treating those just takes a little bit longer, and it kind of varies per joint and per person. But again, what we've tried to do is make ourselves available so that when people do have issues with it, we're not here just to sell the product. We're here to move the needle on quality of life, and we can't do that without being able to help troubleshoot this for people and find them a path through in the best way we can.
Okay, so if people were to buy one of these devices, and we'll talk about obviously the device itself in a second, is there a forum or a community that they can go to ask questions if they're not getting the results that they expect, or on the flip side, if they're getting amazing results and they want to tell you all about it, where would they go to do that?
We have a Facebook group.
Okay.
We started this Facebook group actually around our beta users, and working out protocols with them, and then adjusting. So our product and physiology teams, our technology and physiology teams, have spent thousands of hours, tens of thousands of hours at this point, building out our dosing model, and dosing. How light behaves in different levels of tissue is really complex, and so it's been great for us to dive into it and be able to model that. But we also wanted to make sure that we had a good feedback loop to kind of adjust that, so we're not just doing that in the clouds in an abstract space, that we're actually basing it on real world use cases and outcomes. And so we started our Facebook group, which is now up to, I think, almost 2,000 people who have been using this. And occasionally people will have issues that it's harder to get answers from the community. And so Tom and I and our scientific advisory board have also been available both for the community, and if it gets to a point where someone's frustrated with that, they can reach out directly to us and get on a call, and we can walk through with them what protocols we would suggest and how they can make adjustments to that, because there's so many different kind of use cases from a neuromuscular pain and inflammation standpoint, that it's not one size fits all, and we do have to make adjustments. But it's also something where what we're hoping to do with this is provide an empowerment to people where if you can reduce the pain and inflammation in that joint. One of the things you see, particularly with osteoarthritis sufferers from the knee joints, is when people stop moving, the pain will cause them to reduce the amount they move, which will degrade the joint further, which will cause more pain, which causes them to reduce. So you have this kind of
Sure.
nasty spiral.
Yeah.
And being able to work with them in a healthy way to add movement back in with synergistic movement with the light therapy, and be able to reduce the inflammation, because sometimes there is chronic inflammation in the joint, but you're starting to find acute inflammation from when you're starting to move again. And that acute inflammation is actually not unhealthy. It's actually going to help the body kind of address some of the underlying issues in the joint. And so working them through that, where there may be additional pain in the short term, but they can reduce that by using the device, moves them gets into a kind of a positive spiral where more movement, I can treat the inflammation, no problem. Okay, I can move again. And you can start seeing them move in the opposite direction of where they were headed, which again is in many cases a total knee replacement for that osteoarthritis issue.
Yeah. Okay. So how about I'm going to switch camera here, so hopefully people can see on my desk. I don't think you can see this, Forrest. So I'm going to. This is probably not great for the podcast, but certainly the people that we see it on YouTube can see what I'm doing. So I'm opening the box. So this is the Move Plus. I think that's right, isn't it, Forrest?
That's great.
Okay, so the Move Plus, it comes in a very nice box, I must say, Forrest. It's very nice. And it is a device which has three. What would you call these pods? The light pods.
Light modules.
Light modules. Okay, so it comes with 3 light modules, and each light module has 2 of the lights. I'm going to switch this on and try not blitz my camera. Okay, so I've just switched them on, and they're all independent modules, but I've switched one on, and all 3 have come on together. So that's quite nice. You don't have to switch them all on independently.
This is one of the first questions we had from our community. Again, they've been so supportive and provided us so much good feedback as to how we can make this easier.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. So I've just switched them all on. I've actually just switched them on and then dropped them straight into the charging unit, which it comes with, which is automatically switched them off. I assume it's designed to do that once you put them in the charging unit. And it also comes with an elastic strap, I guess you'd call it, with kind of molded pieces which hold each of the light modules. All right, and then you can adjust that, and it clips together, and it's elasticated. And I mean, I've just had meniscus surgery myself. Forrest, I think I mentioned this to you when we were talking recently. Let's put you back on. Let's put it back on camera. And I've used it on my knee. I've actually kind of only 2 weeks post-surgery, so it's still got a lot of swelling, a lot of inflammation in there. So, and like any of these things, it's difficult to tell whether the improvements that you're feeling are down to time and other things that you're doing, or it's down to, the light treatment that it's getting. So it's different. I've never had meniscus surgery before, so I don't know how. I've got nothing to compare it to. But in any case, it's perfectly designed to go round a knee. So I can tell you from my own experience, it works really well going around the knee. So, Forrest, I mean, could you give me a little bit of information about how you would use it? Obviously, there's the 3 light units, and they're standalone. Let's put them on the camera here. Standalone, and you have the strap itself. I mean, if you wanted to put it on a body part which doesn't kind of work quite so well with a strap like this, what's the kind of advice for that, if that makes sense?
Absolutely. So it's a great question. We've actually just developed a new strap set that will come out in January. It's actually shipping from our factories with the early beta versions right now, but that will have manufactured and available as of January, with 2 different options for that. One is something where you can completely reduce almost to 0 the amount of space between the modules. So you can essentially make kind of a brick out of them, for lack of a better term. And then there's an extension strap that can be put around your body. So this goes back to our community providing such great feedback for us on what we could do to make it easier for them to use. I also just blow up my back and just sprain my lower back every 3 or 4 months, just overtraining. Yep. And so it's one of the first things that I wanted as well is an ability to kind of put these into a small kind of sequential brick and then put it around my waist because it would make it much easier to apply. Right now, it's much more set up for things that are kind of cylindrical. So elbow, wrist, hands, ankle, knee, different body parts like this neck. We've actually had a lot of biohackers using it on their neck recently for essentially blood treatments to increase the nitric oxide going into the brain. But the new straps will actually make it easier. So if you have something where you on your upper back, on your chest, on your lower back, hips, things like this, you can put these into configurations that will be more optimally set for those type of treatments.
Okay, so just so I've got it on the camera here. So this is the setup at the moment. So perfect for, well, it's elasticated and it's got some adjustments in it as well. So perfect for going around the knee and for elbows and things it can wrap around. But if it's going to go on your torso or maybe on your thigh or something like that, then you might need an extension to attach it. Is that what we're saying?
That's right. That's right. And we do have extensions. And again, these new straps that we're going to have shipping in January will also be reducible or extendable from each of those. But reducible mainly is the big thing. From module to module, you can reduce that length to almost zero, so kind of to approaching zero, so that you can kind of keep them in a flexible kind of pattern that's applied to wherever you'd like to put 3 or 4. And we'll also, with the new ones, be shipping out additional holders for it. So if you wanted to have, say, 5 or 6 or 7 different pieces, if you had kind of we have some users with spine issues and they'd like to be able to put it down their spine, you could put these end to end 6 in a row down your spine and be able to treat your full spine like that.
Right. Perfect. Okay. So in terms of the so for example, the frequency of use and the dose in terms of time, I guess it's different for different if you're treating different things, but could you kind of shed some light on the dosage?
Absolutely. Usually, so I treat a couple of different things personally, so I'll give my own experience for these, and I'll kind of walk through a couple of separate protocols as well. If I trigger inflammation, like I mentioned earlier in my meniscus, which I've got an old injury in, and that flares up, since hopefully that'll be useful for you as well. I treat for typically when it's acute issue like that, 15 minutes in the morning and 15 minutes at night. For chronic issues, you can also treat that level, but we typically advise 15 minutes per day because when we start asking for 30 minutes a day, the maintenance of the protocol falls off. So that's one of the things that we found with our early users as well is asking for a minimum of 5 minutes a day in these, because you're going to get some level of the first 5 minutes is going to be a higher leverage time spent on this. A minimum of 5 minutes per day on the pathological tissue, with a maximum of two 15-minute series of those treatments a day.
Okay, so a maximum of 2 times 15 minutes.
That's right.
Okay. So, and what happens? What happens if you effectively overdose? It sounds a bit extreme, but you kind of go over the time. What's the implications of that happening?
It's a great question. So, without going too much of a rabbit hole, there's a curve, kind of like a wave form, like a sine wave, that is optimal dosage versus outcome. And so as you treat more up to that optimal dosage point, the outcomes are better and better. And after you treat more beyond that, if you add more dosage beyond that, it goes back down. So you don't really have any damage. It never goes back below zero. It's what they refer to as non-ablative and non-ionizing radiation, which means ablative would mean so ablative lasers are what you would see from anything that's going to cut or burn tissue. And then ionizing is essentially when you are impacting the molecules enough to move electrons around, and that's a less powerful laser than say the ablative, but it's still something from a radiation standpoint that can make unhealthy outcomes if you're overdosing with those. And this is non-ionizing and non-ablative, so it doesn't do either of the above.
Okay, so there's no harm. It's not like you're going to know where I'm coming from with this. It's not like a sunbed where if you fall asleep on a sunbed, you're going to wake up an hour later and be completely ruined. You know,
That's right.
there's no harm that you can do to yourself with this. Is that what
That's
you're
right.
saying? Okay, good. So
That's right.
it's pretty fail proof from that respect. And again, from my own experience of using it, it switches off after 5 minutes, doesn't it? You have to switch it back on again. Is that preset?
That the 5 minutes is preset, and
Yeah.
the reason we did that is because with our first trials, we found that the longer time we asked for, so if we made standard 15 minutes, then the larger number of the people that would drop out because that 15 minutes became unsustainable for them. Since then, we've actually made some suggestions with our community, taking on board their input for this. One of those is to try this with habit stacking. So, if you have anything that you do for 5 to 10 to 15 minutes a day, whether it's something positive like HRV biofeedback breathing or meditation or something like this,
Yep.
or just a coffee in the morning, that will help kind of carry on the habit building. But with that said, you're not limited to things that are super healthy for you. It could be your nightly Netflix fix that you stack it in with as well, and it gives you something positive to add on top of something where you take some downtime.
Okay. And do you have to sit there static, or can you, or is there any benefit to kind of moving? Say it's a joint. Is there any benefit to kind of moving it actively while you've got the lights on it?
So we've started testing in for active use. One of the things we found is for knees, for example, the knees. One of the things we're trying to treat, particularly with chronic inflammation in the knee, is a synovial fluid, but it's essentially a joint capsule where the ends of your bones kind of both go in, and there's a fluid that makes it kind of smoother for them to move back and forth. This fluid can actually contain a lot of the inflammatory markers that we're trying to reduce, and so when we see people treating at a 90-degree angle on the knee, the penetration into the joint capsule, into the synovial fluid, is much more effective. And so for knees, we'd say try to, if you're going to move it, if you can, but try to treat at 90 degrees and then move in between and then treat again. For other joints, actually moving has not been a problem. We haven't seen a fall off from the actual dosage into the joint capsule.
Okay, perfect. Right. So the device itself, then. I've got your website in front of me. I don't want to get the pricing right before I don't want to get the pricing right, get the pricing incorrect on the broadcast here. So do you want to run through the pricing, Forrest, for the UK?
So the pricing, I believe, in the UK is the 447 is our standard pricing. We do have some holiday discounts on, and I believe we have a holiday discount with you guys, which is the largest one that we're giving with the discount code that we've sent you. So that's for your community, anybody who wants to get in for this, we have a discount code that you guys can find. I think below this
Yes.
this video.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That's quite right. So the standard price for the device is 447, but like Forrest says, there's a deal on. We'll put the details down below for that. So I think I'm going to make a mistake here. I can't remember what the discount was for us. I don't want to make a mistake on that. So I'll make sure I'll make sure all the details. I don't want to be promising discounts that aren't right. So I'll make sure all the details are down below. But it's a substantial discount. I can remember that, and we'll put a link down there for you to place a purchase. There. Is there anything else, Forrest, that they need to know about this device? I think we've covered most things, but is there anything kind of glaringly obvious that you think we need to tell people about?
No, I think this is one thing that I would have loved to put out there, because I know a lot of your community are endurance athletes, and it's a sport where not only do you have kind of the joint issues that people can treat, but there's some recovery benefits to the device as well. And so if you have people who are doing kind of races or doing kind of just regular training and want to recover a little bit faster, one of the other great impacts for athletes is reducing the muscle inflammatory markers. So if you go do and so for me, it's slightly different, but I'll give you my example of this just as a kind of a reference point. If I go do mid weight, high rep work today. So if I go do, front rack lunges of 135 pounds, but I'm doing 300 of them, I know my legs are going to be sore tomorrow. I know where they're going to be sore tomorrow. It's happened enough times to where it's kind of it's embedded in my head, and I would love to be able to reduce that. So what I do is to treat that ahead of time. Within 15 minutes of having finished my training, I do 15-minute protocol on each area that I'm going to expect the soreness, or where I've been doing that kind of high volume work. That's going to drive so much of the muscle inflammation. And just as a reference for what we're looking at for muscle inflammation, C-reactive proteins and creatine kinase are two of the big ones where it drops out heavily if you do this kind of treatment within 15 minutes of finishing the training. And because of that, the next day, the delayed onset muscle soreness is much, much less. And that's there are good studies on that, but I would say from my personal stance, you drop something like 40 to 60% of the soreness that you would have, particularly with those heavy volume days.
Great. Okay, so something which can speed up your recovery, and also speed up your recovery from injuries and aches and pains as well. So okay, good. I don't think there's much more else that we need to cover. I mean, if you want to find out more about the device itself, the website, I think I'm right in saying this, I've got it in front of me, Forrest, is Kineon.io. So that's Kineon.io. The devices there. Are there any other devices available, Forrest, or is that it? I know you said there's some accessories and things. Are they going to get confused because there's multiple devices, or is there just the one?
Just the one right now, but one that you might be interested in the near future is we're developing. We'll launch in 2023 gut microbiome and brain devices, both of which are kind of geared around the same type of inflammation reduction and outcome optimization and performance optimization as the Move Plus. But I'll have to keep you posted on those. Those are in with our product team right now, and we're going to be building out actually beta communities around that from a testing standpoint if you're interested, or if any of your listeners are interested as well.
Perfect. Okay. All right. Good. And they can get in contact with you through the Facebook group if they want to kind of find out more about it and get involved in that.
That's right. That's right.
Okay.
We'll be posting quite a lot there. And again, it's a very active and interesting community. So if you have questions, you can post them there, or just send them in to us directly at hello@kineon.io. And we're happy. We actually all review those. Founders and everyone will be responding to those. So that's a good way to get in contact.
Perfect. Great. Well, thank you very much for your time. I'm going off subject now. This is probably dangerous grounds here, but what have you got you say you're kind of you get involved in startups, and then you kind of this is obviously something you're quite passionate about. Have you got something else exciting in the pipeline, or is it all top secret and you can't or are you completely embedded in this at the moment?
So we're fully embedded here. I think one of the most exciting things we're doing though is these brain devices. We're essentially, and I without going down too much of a rabbit hole on this, I would have loved to start the company with the brain devices initially. We started around neuromuscular pain and inflammation, but I think from a measurable standpoint, from a metric standpoint, one of the things that we can treat most effectively longer term is going to be different pathologies of the brain, different neurological pathologies, which have a metabolic foundation. So essentially, one of the things we're treating from a physiological standpoint is metabolic disorder and lack of metabolic health, and the signaling in your cells that actually drive that. And that's so highly correlated with different neurological symptoms like anxiety, like depression, and each of these, similar to what we were describing earlier, where you have with depression or with osteoarthritis, when you have this kind of weighing you down, you find people going into kind of a downward spiral. And I think we're going to find a way with the treatment for depression in particular to help people, empower them to be able to take steps forward to move out of depression and into a more into a healthier mindset, into a healthier kind of mental space. And for me, that's super exciting. And it's we
Yeah, it sounds
found
amazing.
already that it's linked with the gut and the brain, and so that's going to be the one that's coming down the pipeline next. So it's going to be super exciting technology to get into.
Yeah, well, that sounds amazing. I'm somebody, I suffer from anxiety myself. I quite frequently get quite severe symptoms of anxiety, and I have done my whole life. So I'm definitely interested to find out more about that. If it's certainly something that can help me out for sure. Okay,
Absolutely.
great. Well, Forrest, thank you very much for your time. As I say, I'll post all the links to all the things that we've spoken about down below. But no, I really appreciate your time, Forrest. I look forward to hearing more about your amazing brain. I don't know what to call it, brain product.
Likewise, yes. We'll call it the Brain Plus for now, just
All
just
right, the Brain
just
Plus.
for a placeholder. But no, I really appreciate you taking the time and having me on today. It's been a really enjoyable discussion, and hopefully we've answered some questions for your listeners that will help them out in digging into something that can provide some relief for them long term.
Great, perfect. Thanks for your time.
Thank you so
Cheers.
much. Have a great.